right. Good evening. It is now 6:03. Welcome to the Board of Finance Audit Subcommittee special meeting. Today is Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. Again, it's 6:04 now. This meeting is being held via WebEx only. And our first agenda item, call to order, which I just did. Item number 2 is to hear and consider and approve 2024 officers. I was the chair last year. I don't mind doing it again. If you want to nominate me, Lori, that's fine. And I'll second myself.
Okay. I'll nominate John Matola to be chair of the Audit Subcommittee.
Okay, and I'll second it. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Who was the vice chair last time? Was it you? Or did we not even have one?
We did have a vice chair. Mary's not here, but I guess I'll go ahead and nominate Mary for vice chair.
Or I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And do we need a secretary?
We do.
Okay, I nominate you, Lori Charlton, to be secretary.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And the next item is item number 3, to hear, consider, and adopt a meeting calendar for 2024. We have the dates of March 5th, June 4th, September 3rd, and December 3rd. All meetings will be at 6 p.m. Any discussion about that? Oh, okay. So I'll make a motion to adopt the meeting calendar for 2024.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. And the next item, number 4, is to hear an update from Connie Saxel, our internal auditor, regarding internal audits. And there's no backup under this. I think Connie wants to give a general presentation about what she's been working on and what work she'll be undertaking in the future. Is that correct, Connie?
Yes, that's correct, John.
Yes. So I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
And Lori and myself, if when you're going through this, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt, okay? All right, Go ahead, Connie.
Well, basically, I just wanted to give you an update of what I've been working on since our last December 5th meeting. And since then, I've completed audit test work and wrote a draft report for town planning and zoning. It was an audit of revenue collections and internal controls. Right now, I've scheduled a meeting with the department head to discuss the draft audit report, and I'm meeting with him this Friday and also with his staff to discuss the report. Hopefully,
hey, Connie, when you just interrupt you, when you do the draft reports, my understanding is you send it over to the department head for a review.
Correct.
And then set up a meeting to discuss it with the department head.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So
and then go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. Yes, so I write a draft report with my audit findings and recommendations. I submit it to the department head, and I give them some time to read it and digest the information. And of course, the holidays came and went, and now we finally have an opportunity to sit this Friday and discuss the audit findings and recommendations. And just to clarify any questions that they might have. And also, I do provide them with an opportunity to provide a written response, which I attach to the report so we can hear the department head's view also on the audit findings and recommendations.
Okay. So when you go through that process for any department, you do the draft, you send it over to the department head, and you have a meeting, and then from that there'll be a final report. Generally, how long does that take you? How long does that process take?
Well, from the written draft report, I usually give the department head about 2 weeks to read it and digest the information and try to set up a meeting, usually maybe a month at the most, from draft to final. In the past, though, once the department head had read it, because sometimes I might have gotten something wrong, or they might want further clarification on something, or something to be added into the report to clarify some finding or recommendation. And I'm, I accommodate what, if it's reasonable, of course, I do accommodate the department and the department head. But in the past, I have presented the draft reports after meeting with the department head to the CFO for his review. And sometimes he might have, or she might have, additional questions, or might want me to expand the scope of the audit to look at other areas. And then I go back to the drawing board and I'll do additional test work, expand the scope of the audit, and make any modifications to the report as necessary. So it depends, usually about a month to 2-month process, maybe.
Okay. Do you have any questions on that one, Lori, or that process?
I don't have any questions on the process. My only question is, I thought the last time we met, there were several draft reports out there. And I think that was, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. So I'm just curious about the status on those reports and why they haven't been issued.
Yes, I would love to have them issued as finals. As you know, we've had a transition in the finance department, and I've been trying to meet with upper management to see how we want to handle these reports now, since they are in draft, still in draft form. Do we want to finalize them? Some of them are now, several months old. Do we want to expand the test work and, look at more current and recent data and information? I'm going to try to schedule a meeting this week, if possible, with upper management to see how we want to address these reports.
So did you in the past, you go through the process with the department head, and then before you would issue a final report, would you have to get, like, for lack of a better term, go ahead from the finance department, the director of finance, or is that something
That's usually how it worked. Yeah. Originally it was, I wrote the draft report, met with the department head, made any necessary changes. The draft report went to the CFO. Any additional changes or expanded scope was then pursued if necessary. And then if not, the report was stamped final and submitted as a final report to the Audit Subcommittee, the Board of Finance, and the appropriate parties, the department head and the CFO.
Is there anything, I'm just curious, and maybe Laura, you might know the answer to this question because this is your background. Does that process at all, and I'm looking more at, for lack of a better term, getting the go-ahead from the finance director to release something. Does that process at all inhibit your ability to do your work in a timely manner? And I'm not like trying to throw anybody under the bus or do anything like that, but I can see a situation where you've done a draft report, you get the input from the department head, and it goes to the finance director, and he or she just kind of sits on it and nothing happens, and then all of a sudden 3 months goes by. And I mean, has that ever happened? And you can answer that question. And Lori, I'd like your input on that also, since you have a background in this area. Go ahead, Connie.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, I guess. And just further to John's point, I don't know what these draft reports are in terms of the subject matter of the audit or the potential findings. But depending on the importance of the finding, if the reports are sitting for a long period of time, obviously there's a risk that recommendations that should be put in place timely are not getting done. So I certainly understand the transition in the administration and in the finance department. That's understandable. I would just maybe ask that the goal be that these can be completed and issued prior to your report to the Board of Finance on February 6th. That would be helpful, because I think that in terms of going back and looking at additional transactions, depending on the circumstances, I guess I wonder about the value of that, if you're really going to find something different or not.
Right.
I feel like in general, it's better to just go ahead and implement the recommendations. And also, one of the things that we had talked about was, from a committee perspective, understanding what the plan was for this year and hopefully providing some input so that we could have an appropriate risk-based focus on the audit scope for the year. And I'm not trying to suggest that wasn't done in the past, but just for the committee to have input to that. I guess from my perspective, the ideal would be wrap up the audits that are done and just need to be reported, report those to the Board of Finance, along with the other ones that were completed on February 6th, get those out of the way. And then it would be, from my perspective, helpful if we just have some communication and understand the scope of the upcoming year's audits. I think there's been some terrific work done, and I've hopefully communicated that to you already, Connie. I think you've done a good job in raising a lot of important issues, but I think all of us have a concern in wanting to make sure that we're focusing on potentially the biggest areas or the biggest risks. So that would be, I guess, my perspective on the ideal path forward.
Yes, I agree, Lori. Yes, and every audit is important, and there's always important findings associated with every audit. And I would like to definitely get these. I have 6 right now in draft. Unfortunately, in the past I had to follow the chain of command, so that's why they still remain in draft. And I do want to get them stamped final, because I think there's a lot of good findings and recommendations in those reports that will benefit the town of Fairfield and the departments.
Do you ever, I know if you have a draft report and you're going over it with the department head, and do the recommendations, even in a draft report, if the department head says these are really great ideas, are they then, does the implementation process begin sometimes even before it's stamped final? Your recommendations?
Yes, they do. Many times, as soon as I find something, I bring it to the department head's attention, and they correct it. As a matter of fact, that's happening at the Town Planning and Zoning Department right now as a result of the draft audit report, and other departments too. Yes, the department heads have always been amenable to the recommendations, and oftentimes do implement them even before the report is stamped final.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Connie. We interrupted you. Ask you a bunch of questions. Go ahead.
Any question that you would like. No problem. So I just told you I just completed the draft report of Town Planning and Zoning. I just completed a follow-up of off-duty management. That was per Lori Charlton had mentioned at our last meeting. She was concerned that the ODM reports that are submitted from the police department, are we receiving the money appropriately? Are the police officers paid the correct payroll associated with outside services? So I just completed that audit. I met with Human Resources, who is currently following up on some open items regarding my inquiry of some officer pay rates. I just completed another follow-up on employee credit card expenditures and compliance to newly adopted credit card policies and procedures. I'm currently writing that draft report of findings and recommendations. I tested the months of September through November and am currently just wrapping up that draft audit report. Let's see, I prepared the FY25 budget for town leases for the budget director. I prepared the annual FY24 town lease report, and I made PDF copies of 46 town leases for the town attorney's files. I met with the town attorney to discuss that report. So in the upcoming, I was thinking.
Hey, Connie, have you done that in the past, the lease report?
Yes.
That's something you do every year? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, go ahead.
And my upcoming audit, which I'd like to do, is lessee certificates of insurance review. And then, of course, focus on following up on past audit findings and recommendations. Now that my time has been freed up, I have more time to do focus on auditing and follow up on audit findings and recommendations.
So you have done a follow-up on the credit card expenditures and seeing whether or not we're in compliance with those newly adopted policies that were adopted last summer, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And that's a draft right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Just completed, just writing it and touching it up, the draft audit report.
I don't want you to get into any detail, but can you just give me an idea if things are going in the right direction there, or do you have some concerns still?
I do have some concerns.
Okay.
And they are in the report, and we'll share that with you at the next meeting. Hopefully if we could get that in a final format.
Okay.
Do you have any questions on that? Yes, Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment on that. So when the credit card policy was issued, I was skeptical. I expressed skepticism. I believe that there has to be a process in the finance department or somewhere to check compliance of all the credit card transactions before the bills are paid. I think the new policy that was laid out to us called for something like spot checks, which I was very skeptical that would be adequate. Doesn't sound like it was adequate. And again, I'm not saying that any of this is material or anything, but spot checks are not a good process. I think we have to have my hope was that we would reduce the number of credit cards so that checking all of the transactions for someone would not be an onerous task and that get done. But at the time, I think Mr. Schmidt assured us that, the training had been done, we'd do spot checks, we'd have a follow-up audit. So now we have a follow-up audit. So all I would say is that, I don't know what you found and I don't know what the recommendations are going to be, but it can't be more of the same. This cannot be, if we're finding the same things, reiterating policies to people doesn't cut it. There was, it's like anything. There was supposed to be accountability. We're going to have to do something different. It's kind of amazing to me after all the hoopla of that investigation that things could still be going wrong. And, particularly if they're going wrong routinely. But I do think that if there are still issues, then the focus should be on, on having a compliance function and having some accountability if there's repeated noncompliance, because this is just, the amount of resources and time the town spent investigating that issue and the training that was rolled out and all the energy that was put into it, to think that, 2 months later, people still are getting it wrong is just, if that's the case, I think that's completely unacceptable. So, sorry, my lamp light keeps going out here. So, again, I would just say that wasn't totally convinced before, but if those, if the new policy did not work, then we need to be recommending something different and not just more of the same. So, as you go through that process of reviewing these recommendations with management, and you said you tested what, through November?
I tested the months of September, October, and November 2023.
It's
Okay.
right after we implemented the new procedures and policies, pretty much.
Correct. That is why I selected those months. The policy was adopted September 1, 2023. So when the September 23 reconciliation voucher packages were prepared by the holders, they should have been aware of the policy at that time. And should have been training.
Yeah. And as far as you know, was everyone trained on the new policy, Connie, as far as you know?
I can say no on that.
Okay, well, then I can see why people aren't complying with it. They weren't trained, so. So is this one of, Lori, is this one of the, if this report's done by the February meeting, that this will be presented to the full board? Is that what the intent is?
Yeah.
I mean, I think any reports that have been issued by then should be presented to the board. I don't see any reason to hold that information back, but,
Oh, yeah.
again, when we heard about this, we heard that the training, I was under the impression the training had been completed, A, and that B, all of the employees who had credit cards had to sign off on the policy, and had to sign off that they understood the requirements. And, again, I know this isn't necessarily big bucks, but it's just symptomatic of something larger in my mind if we just can't get this right. So, I think, again, we should, just broadly speaking, should not be paying bills out of finance that are not being checked by someone to make sure that they're in compliance with our policies. And, if we're relying on department heads who are not getting it right, then we have to fix that, or people just lose their privileges to have these things. But again, the broader issue is that, if we can't even get credit card payments right for compliance, what about all the other payments? So, that's why I think this is important. So look forward to that report.
Yeah, and then the other thing, just to throw something else out there, I know the last administration, reduced the number of credit cards that were out there. I forget what the number went to, but I just, I work for the biggest municipality in the state of Connecticut, and I think there's like 2 people who have credit cards. So I don't even, and that's not necessarily a Connie thing here, although maybe she has some input on that at some point. I just think the new administration needs to take a look at whether or not these are even necessary, because it's, to me, I think I said this months ago, it just creates a lot of work for people, right? To verify whether or not they're being used correctly. And to me, if there's so many out there, there's a greater risk that they're going to be used incorrectly. And I think there's got to be a better way to pay for things, other than using a credit card, even in a situation where you have to get whatever you need to get quickly. I mean, it happens where I work all the time, but they manage. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents, but thank you.
I can tell you that the number of credit cards has been reduced.
Yeah.
I believe it was 52 in September, down to 38 in November. So it has been reduced. I can tell you that I did not see any purchases that I felt that were not appropriate or pertinent to the
That's good.
department. Just more compliance to policy and procedure on how to report the expenditures made on the credit card and the approval process and that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. What else do you have, Connie?
Okay, so then Ms. Charlton had inquired about Town of Fairfield bank accounts back at the December 5th meeting. And so she inquired how many bank accounts did the town have? And the town has 12 bank accounts. They range from money market, commercial checking, and some investments. There's 12 of them. Two of them are maintained and administered by the Department, Parks and Recreation and Fire Training Center. 3 of them are administered by the Board of Library Trustees, and those are the Fairfield Public Library. Of course, these 12 town bank accounts, we have money market, the general fund, town payroll, tax collector, and so on. Did you have any questions on that, Lori?
Yeah, so the reason I had asked about that and going off memory, so that the one, you had done an audit on the Parks and Rec.
Yes.
You referred to it as a petty cash account.
Yes.
I guess I think of petty cash as a coffee can with, a few bucks in it, but this was a checking account maintained by the department, which I think had, I don't know, $40,000 or $50,000 of volume
That one,
going
it was
through.
12,000.
12,000.
Mhm.
Okay, it was 12,000. Okay. Okay, so, all right, so that's not that much, but it wasn't the finding of your audit that it exceeded the policy in terms of transaction volume?
Well, the replenishments towards this checking account was continuously replenished. So obviously it's more than a $12,000 checking account. Yes, it had
Well,
been.
and that's my point, right? I mean, if it's not the balance in it, but it's how much is it being replenished for? So they write checks against it, and then the town replenishes it with more cash, right? And the replenishments during the year exceeded the policy for what transaction volume was supposed to be. That was my recollection. And so when we talked about this, I think the audit recommendation was that policies needed to be followed and we shouldn't be using more cash than what the policy called for. But my concern was, why do we have a separate checking account sitting in a department administered by a department to begin with?
Mhm.
It seemed like a relic from the old days before we had a credit card program where they might have a need to purchase something quickly, so they had their own checking account. And I kind of question that to begin with, but I certainly question it if we've got a credit card program. And I know the Parks and Rec Department is a large user of the credit card, the MX credit card program, because they have the need to routinely pay for things, and they run a fair amount of volume through the town credit card. So what prompted my question was, why do they have a checking account also? Is that appropriate? Should it be closed out? If not, why? And are there any other checking accounts floating out there that are sort of outside the centralized control of finance?
Mhm.
And, should we take a look at cleaning this up, or do we just have, do we have these old accounts out there, again, that are relics from the past and shouldn't be out there? I just think it's a bad practice. So you talked about the list. So it sounds like there's only 2 that are maintained by departments, if I got that right. So Parks and Rec, which I still question, why are we maintaining that? Fire Training Center, maybe there's something different about them. And then the Library Board of Trustees runs a couple of accounts for the library, and perhaps those are different in nature. If they have to do with things that are under the authority of the Library Board of Trustees. I don't know. But in terms of the broader question, did you take a look at that, or what is the next step on that issue?
Yes, I did speak to both department heads. I spoke to Mr. Calabrese, Parks and Recreation. I spoke to the members of Fire Training Center who handle this checking account, and both parties seem amenable to relinquishing their checking accounts.
Yeah.
I believe it was initially established to expedite purchases and for the convenience of the department. But as you said, there are other means to procure goods and services by the departments now that there's credit cards available. And of course, you always have your good old fashioned purchase requisition and purchase order / pink voucher. So they have mentioned to me that they are willing, if this is something that is an area of concern for Finance Department and the Board of Finance, that they would be willing to return these funds back to the Town General Fund and procure goods and services in another manner.
Okay, and so does the first selectman have to make the final decision on that, or what does it take to just?
No, I think it would just be contacting the department head and telling them we are in agreement. We're going to close out these two checking accounts and just return the money back to the town.
Okay, and I assume administratively that this would simplify things as well, right? We don't have these extra accounts to maintain and reconcile and manage, right? Okay.
Right.
All right. So yeah, that's helpful. So just, yeah, maybe when you give us your update on February 6th, just maybe let us know the status of getting those accounts closed out. And then the library ones fall into a different category, I assume?
The library falls under the Board of Library Trustees, and I believe that's per town charter.
Yeah.
These funds are donations which are restricted and non-restricted funds by donors to the library, and they have purview over these accounts, and they oversee how these monies are invested and reinvested and so forth, and how they're spent.
And can I just ask, John, one more follow-up
Yeah, go ahead.
question? The other question, the other follow-up question, and you were kind enough to provide some information on that as well, was the broader question of how much cash we are handling
Yes.
in the various departments in town, and the extent to which we can get away with that. And this was prompted by an audit finding that you had, which wasn't a lot of money. It was, I don't know, $400 or $500, but there was some money that went missing, never got deposited in the bank, I think from one of the golf clubs or something. Nonetheless, someone signed off on a bank rec, even though the money never got deposited. And so while the recommendation ran to making sure people weren't signing off on bank deposits that never happened, the broader question was, how do we reduce our risk by moving away from all the cash that we handle in various, taxpayer-facing activities around town. So you provided some information. Obviously, there are some big departments that we know about, solid waste. They take a bunch of cash over there. It's, I think, a few $100,000 a year, if I recall. And there are some other departments as well. Where do you envision that issue going?
Well, right now, obviously, every department has the capability to collect cash from customers. I did look at the various departments. I chose a sample month of June 2023 of cash and check collections.
Yeah.
See what departments were collecting the highest volumes of cash and checks and so on. And for the month of June 2023, for cash was $46,000 for the month. Checks was $1,284,000, totaling $1,330,000. The highest cash collection departments were, number one was solid waste and recycling, which is the transfer station. In the month of June, collected almost $31,000 that month. The second in line was town clerk department, with $9,220. Then we had police department, $2,566, and building department, $1,588. We do like to provide the customer with the convenience of paying with goods and services with cash. Obviously, it's okay in my mind to accept cash and checks as long as you have the proper internal controls in place, which are reconciling your cash collections at the end of the day, making sure you're making timely bank deposit following business day, making sure these collections are secure prior to deposit, making sure that you have the appropriate backup to support these cash collections and the appropriate reviews and approvals, et cetera. I mean, as long as there's strong internal controls in place, I feel comfortable. And you, of course, then you do your regular internal audits. You have somebody checking and making sure that indeed what they're collecting is going into the town general fund. Of course.
But can I just, and I hear you in theory. So first of all, in terms of depositing, so we, you know, we have first of all, there's administrative cost. So, you know, we're collecting cash in departments. We have to send employees with a bag of cash over to the bank to physically deposit it in person. We now have a separate set of controls where we have to reconcile and make sure all the cash that was collected got deposited. You know, to me, if we're also taking credit cards and checks and other things, you know, I mean, I'm maybe partially sympathetic to the idea that we want to give customers this option, but honestly, it sounds to me like it's an administrative burden that we don't really need to take, A, from a cost perspective, and B, I don't think we do have strong internal controls, because I feel like every time you do an audit, you find something. And I don't think in the transfer station, I'm not sure we figured that out yet, which has the biggest cash collections. So, you know, I would like to, I'd like to see alternatives developed. That's my personal opinion. And I think, you know, if the town does an analysis of the alternatives and, you know, can justify why why we still ought to be doing this, you know, then we should talk about it. But gosh, it just seems to me that, you know, every time an audit's done, there's an issue. And this is not an efficient way to do business. You know, been talking about modernizing for years, and, you know, this just isn't modern. And I guess I don't, maybe this is my own bias, because I probably go to the ATM 3 times a year. You know, I feel like it's inconvenient. You have to go get cash and spend cash and replenish your cash. And, you know, most people carry debit and credit cards these days. So I don't, I question it. So all I'm saying is that I hope that what we can do as a follow-up is to look at this issue and you know, reevaluate it, because I've heard that, you know, people want to use cash. I just don't think that's a good enough reason, given, you know, we have risks, we have controls issues, we have administrative costs. And, you know, at least in some cases, we either have cash walking away or we're not sure if it's walking away. So,
hey, Mary, so I guess what I would ask, I kind of understand why some people might want to use cash. Although I'm getting more and more like you, Lori. I think I have $20 in cash on me, and it's always on me. I just never use it. I use my card, but
or your phone.
I'm curious whether or not Kate, I mean, you know, if the finance department or you, Connie, have checked with other municipalities to see if they're getting away from cash. Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, there are some municipalities and certain departments who do not take cash.
Right.
For example, I was just looking online, of course, this was a few weeks ago, one transfer station locally does not accept any cash at all. And it states right on their website, no cash. You know, you got to weigh the pros and the cons of. When you say cash, Lord, do you still want to accept checks as well and just eliminate currency? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of, I'm thinking mostly of paper money, only because that's the riskiest. You know, checks are inconvenient as well. I mean, I really think, again, we have an obligation on behalf of all of our taxpayers to be efficient and to modernize what we're doing. And just because we have some people who might, you know, like to or prefer to pay with cash, you know, to have a whole separate set of processes, a separate set of controls, and a separate set of risks around this,
Yes.
I just don't think that's a good enough idea. If we have a really compelling reason why we need to do this, that's one thing, but I haven't heard that yet. I've just heard, well, some people like to pay cash. Well, you know, I mean, I like to pay credit card, and when I go to a place that doesn't accept credit cards, I don't like that, but it is what it is. So
the con of not accepting cash is obviously then you're moving more towards credit cards, which the town is doing. We are implementing more and more credit cards within every department and allowing customers to pay with credit cards, which is
Or debit cards.
Right, or debit card, which is a nice convenience for the customer as well. You have to consider that there are also fees associated with credit cards. So then you either have to increase your user fee or tack on a convenience fee paid by the customer. And I think we're paying about 3.25% per, I believe, per dollar. So, you know,
or you absorb the fees, but you gain the administrative efficiencies and the lost revenue.
You absorb it as a cost.
Lost revenue.
Right, a cost of doing business, correct. And then you also have to consider that, you know, there are households and persons that who are considered unbanked, who don't hold bank accounts, who don't have credit cards, who, you know, and then what do these customers do? I guess then they have to go to perhaps the grocery store, wherever, to the bank and obtain a money order or a cashier check or something like that. You know,
so maybe, so I'm not suggesting we have to solve this today, but we should look at this on the unbanked issue. You know, I don't know enough about that to speak, but I do know, and I don't know how the state of Connecticut works, but even things like SNAP payments and other things are now, you know, provided to individuals on cards. You know, they're not getting checks, but, you know, people have to get their cash from somewhere. And so if they don't have a bank account at all and a debit card, I don't know where they're getting their cash from either. So, you know, as I said, maybe I would suggest that we analyze it, because I'm sympathetic to the idea that we have to pay fees, but I don't think we know what we're losing. And we do know that we have administrative costs. So I just, you know, we've been talking about this for years, and I know we've made progress, and that's great. And I hope we can get to the point, particularly if other municipalities are doing it, you know, that we can eliminate this issue. So, you know, that to me would be a good item for our project list going forward.
Okay. Anything else? Hey, Mary, well, I know you joined late, but just wanted to let you know we elected you the vice chair. So
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Listen,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. And the meeting has been recorded, so you can certainly watch and get caught up. Connie gave a presentation on what she's currently doing, what she wants to do in the future. There's about 6 draft audits out there she hopes to have done really soon. And at our February meeting, she's going to be able to hopefully present final audit recommendations to the entire board. Is that correct, Connie? That was kind of summed up what happened?
That is correct, John.
Anything there, Mary, that you want to chat about or ask a question? I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. I heard a good portion of Connie's presentation. Unfortunately, I got stuck in traffic coming home tonight.
Okay,
And,
all right, good.
I was a little bit late.
Okay,
I apologize.
no worries. All
Um,
right. Do you have any questions, anybody else, or statements or concerns for any of the members? And we do have a schedule for meetings in the, for this year that they'll be put on the schedule, and it's on the agenda. So we voted to accept those dates too, Mary, just so you know. So
Okay. Good.
anything else? All right, seeing nothing. Connie, thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Thank
Do
you.
Lori, Mary, do you have anything you want to add before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. I'll second.
second
You
it.
have Mary seconding it? Thank you. It was a nice meeting. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
And we'll see you all at the regular Board of Finance meeting. I think it's that March 6th or 5th, something like that, right?
February 6th.
February.
Yes.
Thank you, February, I meant to say. I wish it was March. But
All right. Good night, everyone.
All
good
right.
night. Thank you. Have a
Everybody.
great night.
Thank you.